Well, thank you, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our At Breakfast with Arts and Entertainment Journalists. My name is Marisela Cueva. I'm president of VPE Communications, and we are also the sponsor of today's webinar. I'm also on the board of PRSA-LA and co-chair of the At Breakfast with series, along with my co-chair Claudia Santa Cruz from Santa Cruz Communications, and then our Eric Deutsch from Excel PR as well. So we have a wonderful panel, and the way we have the program set up is that I have a set of questions I'll be asking them, and then towards the end, we will give enough time for you all to ask questions as well. So here in LA, we know that we're the hub of the entertainment world. The media landscape is dynamic and competitive. And then against this backdrop, how can we as PR professionals effectively pitch our stories to art and entertainment journalists and secure coverage for our clients? This is where our panel of experts come in. We have with us today a group of dynamic journalists and editors, each with their own unique perspective and areas of expertise. So they'll be sharing with us insights and advice on how to effectively pitch them. Before I introduce our panel, make sure that you've muted yourself as well. We don't want to hear any background noise. And also, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat while we're doing the presentation as well. And so without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce each of our panelists. So I will begin with Pamela Avila, who's entertainment editor of USA Today. So Pamela is a journalist, editor, and social media strategist. She's based in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. Her reporting focuses on focuses on entertainment, pop culture, and books, with a lens often on the Latinx community and the way those topics intersect with social justice. She currently serves as a USA Today's evening entertainment editor and Latinx culture writer. She previously worked as a social media manager for Los Angeles Magazine, and more of her bylines can be found in Business Insider, Hunker, E! News, Shondaland, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. We also have Tricia Durrant. She's supervising producer of ET Online, ET Mas. She has 15 years of experience in talent relations, booking and producing entertainment news. She has worked at E! Entertainment, Access Hollywood, and currently Entertainment Tonight. She's a proud University of Miami Hurricane. We also have Craig Nakano, who's the assistant managing editor for entertainment at the LA Times. She's running a team that covers movies, TV, music, podcasting, celebrity news, internet culture, books, and the fine arts. He previously served as deputy editor of the department, and prior to that as arts editor, coordinating critic and reporters covering art, architecture, theater, classical music, and dance. Since starting at the LA Times in 2000, he has been an editor for the home and travel sections. Before Craig moved to LA, he was an editor at the San Francisco Chronicle and the Desert Sun in Palm Springs, and he's an alum of Northwestern University. Thank you for joining us, Craig. And then Paula Ulichny is National Assignment Editor for Associated Press. She has been with the Associated Press for 10 years, leading all daily and major entertainment events across the US. She's a native Angelino who studied at UCI and CSUN. She currently resides in Eagle Rock with her two favorite creatures, her dog Charlie and her husband Max. So welcome. And thank you for being here with us today. So I want to start off the conversation by asking Paula a question. So Paula, does the AP use handouts of photos, or do you only use AP photos? Can you just walk us through that process?
Yeah, in general, we don't use handout photos, especially when it comes to portraits. Copyright is something really, really complicated to establish. So when we just use our own photos, it's easier. In the rare case, when we do use a photograph, we have to establish copyright. If it's a headshot or something else or a portrait, that means going back to that portrait photographer and getting permission. And that's really, really hard to do. Sometimes if the photo is old, that's impossible. If it's something like a Broadway show or something where there's only a house shooter inside, if that person is a staff photographer, and that means the company owns the copyright for those photos, then on a rare occasion we can use those. But in general, we try to steer away from it. There have been legal issues where, photographers come back later and said, I know the publicist told you that they have the right to use this photo, but they don't. And that becomes a lawsuit. So we've learned our lesson that, sometimes there's miscommunication, and the rights for somebody like AP will never go just for AP. We have millions of members all over the globe. So when you send a handout photo to us, it's not just for AP, it's for every sub agency and every other client that uses our photos and our members. So I think it can be a little bit farther reaching than people initially realize. They think, oh, it's just for your AP story. As soon as it moves on the AP wire, it's for everybody.
Great. And then what tips do you have for people who are trying to pitch you or send photos to you? Do you just what you pretty much said? Are there any tips that you can provide?
Okay, well, I would say if there is a handout photo that you need, that you're trying to provide for, let's say a writer's doing a story and you've pitched that writer and you'd like us to use those photos instead of our own, what I would say is have some proof that you own the copyright for that photo, or give us the contact for the photographer that took the photo. If you can say that is a staff photographer on, let's say you're representing somebody and it's Sony, and you can prove a Sony photographer took that photo, that's fine. We're good to use it. Otherwise, we're going to need that name. Just try to get us as much information as possible. We're juggling a million things. And so try to research who the photographer is, where they live, what their contact information is, their website. All of that would be helpful.
Great, thank you. And then I want to now ask Tricia. So Tricia, after COVID, we all got used to doing interviews via Zoom. Does that still work for ET, or do you still prefer the in-studio, in-person interviews or on location?
Yeah, we prefer in studio, in person. I think there's definitely a viewer fatigue with Zoom, as I'm sure all of you included. We do still offer Zoom interviews, but that's mostly for newsy interviews or A-listers. And you know what? If a studio tells us a junket is over Zoom because Reese Witherspoon shooting in Bulgaria, random, I know, we'll do it to support the project and for studio relations. But I think it's definitely improved the media landscape. It's fascinating that so many of us just didn't even think about using it before. But I just think in person is just going to look so much better. And when you can be in person and look a correspondent in the eye, it's just going to be make for a better interview. And yeah, so we're still getting pitches constantly, virtual, and we're passing a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think what happened too is during COVID, we were all forced to immediately learn how to use Zoom, and I think the audience as well had to get used to seeing interviews being done on Zoom. So I can see how now we're all wanting to revert back to the in-person, actually seeing the person in a much better lighting than in a vacuumed Zoom experience. So that's great to know that you're out there now and wanting to do more in-person interviews. That'll be good for us to know as well. So now, thank you. So I want to ask Pamela a question. So Pamela, as an entertainment editor, do you accept only pitches when there's an A-list celebrity involved? Or how can publicists make a case for other artists in the industry?
Well, I think first and foremost, obviously, when there's top and A-list celebrities involved, then that's when we'll gravitate more toward accepting a pitch, for example. But I think but it's definitely not limited to just, your A-listers, for example, the, Brendan Fraser's, Jamie Lee Curtis, etc. But so I think whenever there's other celebrities involved that might not be part of kind of mainstream pop culture, or that, maybe might not necessarily be someone that our USAT reader would be clicking a story about. I think it definitely helps to kind of, in a sense, make a quick case for why they're appealing, why their story will resonate, and just kind of give us a little bit more meat to work with when it comes to the pitch. And then from there we can go on to discuss like how we can tell an engaging story with the celebrity or with whatever project that you're pitching, and then just go from there. So I don't think we're definitely not limited to just, you know, picking the A-list celebrities. I'm personally, as an entertainment editor, interested in other stories and highlighting other other clients, other projects, and other things that aren't just the quick kind of grabby thing that you just see on the headlines across the board. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of adding a little bit more context and nuance to your pitch, and just to give us more information about why it would resonate and why it would make sense for us to move forward with something like that.
Thank you. And then, and Craig, I know that the LA Times is considered a local outlet, but it does have a national appeal and reach because of its online platforms. So do you prefer, when someone's pitching you, for them to be just local stories to be pitched to you, or do you consider national ones as well? And then I also want you to weave in some of the other features in the LA Times team as well, like that we're not considering when we're pitching you, like your podcast, your also your features team and the video teams as well. So if you can share some of that insight as well.
Sure. Like, yeah, LA Times, the team I work with in entertainment is a little bit of an outlier for the LA Times in that we're not as local as the other teams in the building, many of the other teams, and we really focus on three audiences. The first audience for the entertainment team is a national audience of pop culture consumers, people who just are obsessed with the latest TV show, movies, music. The second audience that we're really speaking to this is all from a digital standpoint, since our priorities is digital. The second audience are the people who make that pop culture. You know, anyone who works in Hollywood, above the line, below the line, could be the talent in front of the camera or people who are working behind the scenes. We consider them all, since we're here in LA covering Hollywood, that sort of industry perspective is key for us and one that we're trying to own. And then the third audience are is local. It's Southern Californians who are looking for guidance on the best culture in LA. How can I make the most of this incredible place where I live? And I would say it's helpful to know, like, when you're pitching, like, who is the audience for the story? Because that's the process we're going to go through. Does the story plug into one of those three audiences? And also, how are they going to find it? Like, the vast majority of our stories don't gain an audience through our homepage. They gain it through search, or they gain it through social. And so it's helpful to know, how is the LA Times going to find an audience for the story? Is it a topic that's being heavily searched on Google for, or are there social media accounts and venues that are going to push it out? So that's helpful for us. I will share a second chat. To the second half of your question, Marisela, this is the LA Times newsroom directory, and I use it all the time when I get inquiries. It's such a large organization. It's sometimes hard to figure out who's the best person to pitch to. And if you scroll through there, you will see there are teams there's an audio team, and they do set their own agenda and assign their own stories. There's a studios team that does video. They're shifting more toward sort of like a lot of mini documentaries. And then there's also, you'll see references to a fast break team. Those are people who cover breaking news. If something happened today and your client made news today, there's sort of a rush it's a competitive story, a rush to get it up. The fast break team sort of specializes in really quick coverage. And then also you'll see on there two Latino initiatives area staff. And that's a really big growth area for us. I mean, throughout the Times is trying to get better about covering Latino communities in all of the different departments, but we also started an initiative this year that will launch in summer. That's two-pronged. There's a group called De Los that will launch in summer that is specifically targeting English-speaking Latinos here in LA, primarily Gen Z and millennials, and its entire team of columnists and reporters and editors who will be laser focused on nothing but that. And then there's a counterpart. We have an existing LA Times in Espanol team that serves a Spanish-speaking audience. That group has a new editorial director, and together it's a part of our Expanding Latino Initiatives group that is also really, a good place to pitch as well.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I have seen where if the story runs in the LA Times General, sometimes it'll be picked up in Espanol. So
yeah,
that's good to see. So you're getting that maximum impact as well.
Yeah, we're doing more translation both ways. Like we also are getting better. The Espanol team, quite frankly, operated as a sort of an independent group for a very long time, and we're trying to better coordinate that group with the rest of the newsroom. So if we have with the Latin Grammys, we aren't having one reporter write a main bar in English and a different reporter write a main bar in Spanish. We'll have the writer write the Spanish story, and we'll take that and translate it into English. And the Espanol story actually could run in print version of the LA Times, just translated into English.
Great. And then also just tagging along with the photos and video, are you also accepting original video as well, or any of that? Or do you still prefer to have your photo journalists go out and take the picture?
Yeah, if it's local, we try to take it ourselves. We are running into, excuse me, the same problem that Paula referenced, which is that it's like an entire new industry it's like, instead of the ambulance chaser, it's like a copyright chaser. People who are looking to sue because we've used a handout art that we did not have permission to use. And so in order to get a handout photo uploaded into our system, our lawyer now requires some sort of written verification that that represents the owner giving us permission to publish the photo.
Great. Okay, and that's a perfect segue into Paula, because I'm going to now go and ask Paula another question. So Paula, do you work in conjunction with the editorial department, or does AP Photo work separately?
Yeah, we are all editorial. Yeah. We all work together, and especially in entertainment. My focus is in entertainment. First of all, I want to also thank Craig for their coverage of Vanderpump Rules. Thank you so much, reading it regularly. Okay, so sorry. Yeah, so we all work together. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then also, do you also have like any tips for as far as for some of the people here that are trying to pitch you as well? I think for most part, when we're thinking of journalists, I think that we sometimes will not remember that we should be pitching you as well. And so if you can just give us some tips on that of what is the best approach for that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just know who you're talking to. If you're, I'm in entertainment, I get pitches a lot for hard news and, different kind of feature stories. And there's nothing I can do for that. Sometimes if I have the time, I'll try to link you with the right person. But yeah, I think it's just really important to know who you're reaching out to, do a little bit of research, and then as much information as you can get. So like, I mostly assign people to events all over the country. So if I'm going to send a photographer to your event, I just need to know A-list talent obviously is very important for photos, but also why is it important? If you can give me a reason that it's newsworthy.
Mhm.
I also take advantage of when it's slow. I have photographers that might be staff and sitting around and like, summers are slow, maybe really look into an
That's
event.
good. That's a good insight. Yeah. So in the summertime,
Mhm.
are there any other like slow times that we should
Fall
put
is a
on our?
little bit slow. So anything, if you look at the calendar, you don't see a lot of award shows, then it can be kind of a slow time. And I'm like, I'll send a photographer out to just grab features for the day, or venues and stuff that we can just keep for possible future stories. But so that's a good time to.
But they all have to have a national appeal, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily, not at all. We'll provide photos for LA Times or for local papers. So we have bureaus all over the country too. So if you happen to have a client or someone you're working with that's in a different state, I handle the entire country for that. But it's definitely local is heavily, entertainment is so LA focused. So yeah.
Great. Great, thank you. And then now, Tricia, just going on to the broadcast. So how do you decide which stories go on air and which are only on the online platform? And can you be pitched for online stories only, or does it have to also apply to broadcast?
Yeah, so it's changed over the years. I've been in entertainment news for like 15 years, and ET is now one brand. Digital and broadcast are one team, and I know our competitors are still separate. I think it's pretty obvious why we're one, because the future is digital, and so it's so nuanced. So the best thing to do is just pitch for both. I think some publicists know, Tricia, like this clip from a TLC show, obviously for a digital audience, the digital audience is hungry for these wild TLC shows. Like, here's your digital pitch, but don't be afraid to pitch for both. As far as new interviews, video interviews, so nuanced. It could be, say Vanderpump Rules. They were pitched 2 months ago. It's going to be a digital interview. It's for, a digital audience. Well, then a scandal breaks out and it's in our show every night, and now it's on the show. So I will book an interview. For example, I have Rosie O'Donnell today for her new podcast, and my head of digital's like, oh, the digital audience is obsessed with her kids. Like, her daughter Vivian's on TikTok saying this about Madonna, blah, blah, blah. And my broadcast EP is like, well, let's see what we get. And then we can, if what we get, we can put on the show. Well, ultimately, I've already been like, oh, this will be great for the show. So it's going on the show tomorrow night. But whatever does well on digital, like the most random unscripted stars, the most random 90s stars. Yeah, we
So it's important to start looking at some of those
Yeah.
trends of what's trending online and just be mindful of that.
Yeah,
And then try to,
yes, we're very cognizant of data
Mhm.
metrics. So we are looking at all of our social platform metrics, especially YouTube for video, and different things do well on different platforms, which is just wild. But YouTube audience is different from the site versus Facebook. So it's so nuanced. Just pitch for the brand.
Got it. Perfect. And then Pamela, you've written articles that end up both online and on print. And how do you decide if the story makes it to the print? But I'm talking specifically on the life entertainment section that you cover. So what types of stories are going to get included in the print as well?
So whenever, for example, whenever it's my byline and I'm writing something that goes digital first, we're always constantly pitching that to go in the print version of USA Today, whether it's, you know, the next day or a week from now. I just had a story that published in print earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, but the story was published about a week or two ago online. So the timeliness, it depends on the timeliness of it. So again, like if, for example, when Queen Elizabeth died, that's, you know, that was mainly on the entertainment side, but because it was such, you know, such big global news, it made it onto the front page and everything like that. And within that kind of time frame, I also had an interview that I had an interview with Sebastian Yatra. And so that was one of those things where it was like, if there's already so much booked for, you know, in other news, then sometimes certain stories like don't make it on the issue because of that. So there's kind of no specific answer to like how we figure out what goes online and what goes on print or what goes on both. Because it just really depends on the news cycle. So if we're, you know, if we're busy with like award shows, then we're going to prioritize that and any stories there to go on print first. Or if we have, you know, some major interviews, we have some major TV reviews, things like that, that's going to get priority. Because, you know, we're also fighting, not fighting for space, but in a way we're fighting for space with, you know, sports section, world, nation, etc. So we have only so much space in this whole issue to just to include the best entertainment stories that, and there's so many that we publish like on a daily basis. And then when it comes to, for example, maybe stories with like a shorter shelf life, maybe those just automatically won't be some that make it into the print issue. So it just really depends on like the timeliness aspect of it. So if we're talking about a movie review, a new album coming up, a really big concert, for example, this week we included like Taylor Swift's opening night over the weekend. But if you're, you know, if we're talking about something that just has like a shelf life of a couple hours or a couple of days, and that necessarily won't be making it in print. So it just really depends the news cycle. So if it's pretty slow, then that's when we'll kind of throw in a little bit more options into print. And if it's just a busy news cycle, then that's when we're kind of being a little more pickier and choosier when it comes to that. But ultimately, it just also depends on space, how much space we have for it, and the news cycle. So it depends, but we're constantly pitching our entertainment stories to make it into print because, you know, they're all just as important as everything else. So it's just it depends.
Yeah, I've also seen too that like I'm on Twitter, that some of the outlets will put the story first online, and then I'll see like different versions of headlines, but it's the same story. So is that something that you're trying to see which one's going to get the pickup and engagement before it goes online onto print as well? That also for Craig too, and I guess for everyone too, as to like, are you trying to see which one is, you know, is drawing a lot more interest, and then maybe that maybe considered to be, you know, to make it into the print edition?
I wouldn't say that the headlines that we use online kind of determine what headline we're going to use in print. Because, for example, on the digital side, we just have a different mix of editors. And then we have our editors that work on the print issue kind of alone. So then if I'm writing a story and that gets published today, then that's kind of as far as I'm involved with it. And once someone from the someone who works in like the print issue of it all, they'll go into the story, they'll send it over to our printing, and then they'll change the headline up to what they deem fit. Sometimes they will, you know, reach out and maybe like ask if context is being lost, or if, you know, a certain word that they're choosing is right or wrong or what have you. But for the most part, I'm just focusing on the digital aspect, and then someone else picks that up and kind of repackages it for it to fit into print, and for it to you know, to get another headline that sounds good. But in terms of like the headline, the different headlines that you're seeing in digital, we have particularly for USA Today, and I think at other places that I've worked at too, we have 2 to 3 headlines that we work with. We work with our page title, which is kind of really SEO driven and heavy. So that's what you're gonna see popping up in Google, and then trying to capitalize on search trends and what people are searching for, and you know, wanting to find more about. Then we have our headline that's more geared towards social. So we're going to make that a little bit snappy and more to the point, and that's going to be what people see like on their Twitter feed. So that's going to be shorter, something that's going to grab your attention like right away. And then we have our kind of more, our longer, more editorialized headline, which is what you're going to see once you actually click the page and you go to our USA Today landing page. So that's going to be sometimes a little bit longer. It's going to have a little bit more context, things like that. So those are just, those might be like the different headlines that you're seeing on your end online. And then when it comes to print, then the editors there choose a different headline that's shorter, grabbier, etc.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I want to also now go to Craig. I think this is a question that a lot of us are curious about. So do you prefer the pitches go to you first, or do you mind for PR folks going directly to the reporter who covers that specific beat?
Yeah, I mean, I think most editors, if not all of the editors in my team, are perfectly happy if you're pitching reporters directly. I mean, quite frankly, we feel like the best stories come when the reporters have their idea, and their idea might actually be your idea that you give it to them, but that there's just the stories turn out better that way.
Okay.
You can develop faster, and there's no sort of like, and I also think it's.
So you won't get upset at us if we're pitching the reporter.
Right. No. We definitely don't feel like you're going around us. I will say the one thing that's helpful though is if you pitch one. What I would do is pitch transparently, and pitch if you're pitching multiple people, make sure it's clear you're pitching multiple people. Where it gets into a little bit of trouble is if you pitch one person, because maybe you're hoping that that's the one reporter who's going to do it, or one editor, and they say no. If you then start to go down the list to other people within the newsroom, that's when I think editors in particular can kind of feel like there's a reason why we didn't want to do that story, why you try, that there's a little bit of, sometimes some editors don't care, like, but a little bit of prickliness about like trying to work around. But
so what would be the best approach for that? So if you know that, because it's true, sometimes we have a story and we already have like our wish list of reporters who we want to cover.
I mean, I'm curious to hear. I'm curious what the group feels. I mean, from my point of view, I would say pitch. If you want to pitch 8 people, make the pitch as a group pitch to everyone, so everyone can see who else getting pitched. A lot of times, if I'll see the list, and if there's someone who I think, oh, I don't think anyone on this list is gonna like go for that, but this other person might, I will actually go ahead and like suggest a different person. And I just think that is more efficient and prevents any sort of spinning of wheels. So like if you did go to one editor and the editor turned them down, if 2 days later, let's say you pitch the music editor, he says no, but then you think, oh, it's about music and film, and you pitch the film editor goes to the music editor and say, I got this pitch, it's not for me, but do you want to take a look at it? The music editor is going to be like, I already turned that down. Like, why? And that'll feel like a waste of time. So that's why.
Yes, that makes sense. Perfect. Okay, that totally makes sense. Does anyone have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, in my world with photos, sometimes we'll have people pitch a freelance photographer thinking that they work for us, or pitch one of our staff photographers. No, it's better to come to the editor in that case. Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. So I have more questions that I want to ask, but I also want to be mindful of time. And then I also want to ask the audience. So Christina, if you can send me, I know that you're monitoring the questions. Okay, so I have a question here. So how do you find a balance between pitching something that's novel and something that's already has interest? So I'll send that over to Craig and then also the panelists as well. Anyone else wants to chime in as
Yeah, I know in an era where everyone, editors included, are so fixated on data, we're getting numbers of exactly how many people clicked on a particular story. And we're thinking about, is the audience for the story going to come in from search or social? I know it's easy to get in a trap of thinking that all we care about are the clicks, and the only thing we're going to cover are things that have celebrities attached or someone with a huge social following. And at least for us, it is a balance. Like we do, our interest is beyond that, and we see ourselves as having a community mission. And so even if you don't have that celebrity, even if the subject of your story doesn't have a huge social following, that doesn't mean we wouldn't do the story or that we didn't know how to find an audience for the story. It's really kind of getting at, why do people care? And put in the chat, some editors or reporters use like a headline test. And it's really about why is this person important, or why should we know this story? Why should people know about the story? And being able to boil it down into a headline that really just is crystal clear about why this is important and why you need to know. And if you can do that, I think it greatly increases your chances for, for getting your client in the news. And it is a balance that we face a lot. But yeah, if you're able to do that and really kind of crystallize, why is this person important? What change are they making? I think that even if it's not a name, the news that they're making, the importance that they hold in our world, I think is can be everything for sure.
Yeah, and I also think it's our job to tell, at least it's ET's job to tell the audience what is cool, what is popular, what is in pop culture, to inform them so they can go and talk to their friends about it. And our demo is wide ranging, and so on broadcast you're going to sometimes need to tell the audience, hey, like, this is what Vanderpump Rules is like, and this is why people are talking about it. And then you need to know who is the next Billie Eilish, and so when it's time to interview that person, inform the audience, this is why you need to know them. Because whether you like it or not, we kind of are the gatekeepers. And so it's my job to be tracking what's up and coming. And so if I have a writer online who's like, Yellow Jackets is going to be the next big thing, we have to cover it. It took a while for that show to, get their cult following, but it's our responsibility to say, watch this. So I think that's exciting for me as a producer, because I get to really just kind of track people's careers. And so it's like, of course I knew Austin Butler was going to be big a year ago. So it's our job to interview him and kind of find ways in. And if that's talking about his Disney Channel career, that's our way in. But I think it's just so exciting.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in or add anything to that hasn't been said? I think this is, it's in addition to what you discussed, Craig, and as well, is how do you handle celebrity and brand partnerships? Are you still interested in interviewing and featuring relevant trending celebs, if that's the context of a branded campaign? If it's in the context of a branded campaign. So, oftentimes we all represent different brands, but then we have a celebrity tied in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it just goes back to like, what is the news? And, you know, and the one thing I will say on that front is sometimes I think we've had instances where folks where there is a sponsor or a brand that's running, that's basically kind of hosting an event. Let's say it's I'll just use it as an example, a museum awards gala. And they're honoring someone for some artist for their great work. And maybe the gala is being sponsored by a fashion brand, I don't know, Gucci, whatever. A lot of times we will get a little heat from publicists who are mad that we aren't mentioning the sponsor more, or at all, like in a caption, like, and I will say, like, we don't go out of our way to do it, but also we don't go out of our way to not do it. And it's just, we don't see it as part of our job. And we're great, you know, good for the museum that they got a sponsor, but we don't really care. And we don't, I guess it's a plea not to plead us, because we're not going to go back in and rewrite the caption to get the name of the sponsor in.
Okay.
It's just not what we do. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Another question. This is from Lisa White. How do you determine what's been covered too much? Like, how do you determine like audience fatigue as well? So
I'll go for it. It's
okay.
just, I mean, ratings and metrics, but also I think, you know, we have a large staff and we discuss things. And if everyone on the staff was watching The Bachelor 2 years ago and now no one's watching The Bachelor, that's a sign of something, because we breathe, eat everything pop culture. And so the metrics actually do line up with that online about The Bachelor. So we went from covering every week on broadcast to now not covering it all on broadcast. And so, yes, oh my God, I get fatigue often, but if the readers and viewers want it, you got to cover it.
Yeah, that's so true. And then just, I want to tag on to that as well, that someone is asking, Andrea Baron is asking if you can talk a little bit about MAS, the ET MAS.
Yeah, so that is a vertical we started a few years ago on the website, and now it's just we don't focus on the verticals as much. It's just we cover the news, and if we cover all news as diverse as possible, because that's vital, and it's what our readers want. But you're just not pitching for ET Moss. You should pitch to ET. So like I said before, if you're pitching to the brand for broadcast digital, just pitch to the brand, because it's all so vital. But we do still have the vertical as well as Black stories on the site. It's just that's it's really not, we're not labeling or focusing, you know, it's just ET.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have another question from Hermias. How does what your competitors cover or the angle they may take impact what you report, or how do you cover the news? So Craig, if you want to start with that, it's like, how does what your competitors cover or the angle they take impact what you report or how you cover the news?
Yeah, like I will say we are, I think we're a little more naturally reluctant to want to follow someone else. Like no one wants to just follow and do the same story. And so for us, the question is really, is there something different or something better that we could do? And along those lines, I guess I would say to the group, if you are pursuing the strategy of offering an exclusive to a particular outlet, really think hard about who you're offering an exclusive to and what you're gonna get out of it. Because I know, like in particular, this is gonna sound, you'll get my little speech that I sometimes give people after I feel like we've been wronged. You'll get it in advance. I will say, like, if it's a big LA institution that we cover a lot and that we are truly committed to covering week in, week out, month in, month out, and an out-of-town competitor swoops in and you give an exclusive on the biggest story of the year to that outlet, you know, my reaction is going to be, why did you do that? Like they're going to do one splashy story and then they're going to leave town and be gone, and they're not going to come back to you for like a couple of years. And you're going to come to me expecting me to continue to do the week in, month in, month out coverage. And I'm going to say, why should I do that? You know, like I was committed to you. Why were you not committed to me?
And which web publication you're talking about, Craig?
So anyway, that's my you get to hear the spiel beforehand. Like, and I think that's true. And I totally get the need, and organizations need to really try to maximize their coverage. I would just say, be really thoughtful about who you choose to give an exclusive to if you try to play that game. And to Lisa's question, hi Lisa, I just wanted to chime in a little bit on her question about fatigue. Like, I think that is a really great question. And if you do have a client who has been covered a lot, like when I get a pitch and the pitch includes links to like 3 recent stories on the client, and I'm going to be story number 4, like I just move on. There's no point in me being, you know, story number 4. And I, you know, I think back to Yuzhen Wang, just massive classical star coming to town. I hadn't covered her for a while, but it's been obviously just covered a ton. And we didn't want to just do another, there's no point in doing another profile. We've profiled her, we've covered her concerts, her performances. What was useful then was to say, well, what if we did something different? Why don't you spend an afternoon with a reporter? And we just did like an experience story. And if Yuzha comes to LA, where does she like to hang out? Where would she want to go? And when the answer was like, oh, she wants to go to Universal Studios, we're like, oh my God, like one of the world's top classical stars wants to go to Universal, like we'll go too. And we spent a day at Universal Studios with Yuzha Wang, and it was great. So that's one way we try to break out of that is maybe we'll go and do something with and write and have like an experience and be able to write a narrative off of hanging with the person. And that requires a commitment of time, but the stories are so much better.
Great. And then real quickly, Craig, someone wanted to know the name of the initiative targeting English speaking Hispanic millennials.
Yeah, I dropped it in the chat. It's DE-LOS, DE space LOS. It's not going to launch until summer as the target. I believe June or July, although it may move. And then we're still staffing that up. So what you see in the newsroom directory is only a partial list of the staff. It will be significantly larger by the time we're done. Great.
And then we also from Rita, she wants to hear also from the panelists regarding the question of how do you handle celebrity and brand partnerships, and are you still interested in interviewing and featuring relevant trending celebs if it's in the context of a branded campaign?
I'm happy to go. So for us, we are really not interested in giving free advertising for brands. We will do it. And I include campaigns as well. We have to get it approved by our sales team. If they have already been in touch with McDonald's about something, we're certainly not going to interview Chrissy Teigen about her favorite McMuffin, because this is a national brand. You have the budget. You should be doing an integration with us. And so at previous television shows where I worked, they didn't mind as much. So we got a lot of great bookings, and they were able to talk about their soy milks and their orange juices and deodorants and But for us, on broadcast especially, we're rarely going to do that now. Because it's just free advertising. But if you like for digital, if you need a quick mention of something and I have a relationship with you, sure, I'll add in that they were wearing David's bridle in this photo. But we're definitely getting more strict about it.
So what is like the integration fee range?
I'm not
celebrity and
privy to speak on that.
Okay.
Email me.
Okay, great. Okay, then we have another question from Lorena Alamillo. Do embargoes really help get a jump start on the story, or do these help the potential, or do these help the potential of arranging a story? So, Pamela, like, does it help when it's an embargo, or?
I wouldn't say that it necessarily helps. I think it or at least helps getting any kind of like more bang for our buck, so to speak. I think with embargoes, the main takeaway for us, or at least personally that I've seen working there as an editor so far, is just that we know of things in advance, so we can plan more accordingly, and we have more of a a timeline of when that embargo is going to lift, and then in that time frame we can start with our like audience and social media plans to once that embargo lifts and our story goes live, then we have all our social media things go out and like all our promotional aspects of it. But I wouldn't really say that it helps the potential of arranging this story. I don't think we are really factoring in, oh, is this an embargo or not, in terms of like, are we going to cover it or not? It's just kind of, again, just depends on the nature of the embargo and whether it's worth it to us to sit on the story for however long that embargo is in there, whether we're really interested or not. So I think, again, it just really depends on the story you're coming to us with and whether it's something that's a fit for the section.
Great. I don't know if anyone else wants to ask. Otherwise, I have a question for Paula. Okay, I'll just go into the question for Paula. So Paula, most publicists are used to pitch AP reporters rather than photo editors. So when you cover an event, how do you relay the editorial information tied to that event? Is it in the form of a photo caption?
Yeah. Yeah, everything goes through photos. A lot of stuff we work in combination with the writer. So there's always going to be communication. If it's something's pitched to me, I do communicate it with the writer as well. So it usually does come to them first. If you're pitching a portrait, that can come to either me or the writer first.
Okay, great. Well, I want to be mindful of time. We have 5 minutes. And Christina, I don't know if we have any time for another quick question. Let's see. Okay, we have time. So perfect. Okay, so rather than a question, I think if we could just real quickly do have each of you just give like some quick tips. We're going to be dropping in to everyone that registered. We'll be sending over their contact information. So we'll have their email addresses as well. So we'll be sending that to everyone that's online right now. But just real quickly, Paula, if you can start, if you have like any insights or any information or a final message, tips for us professional PR pros that are going to be pitching you after this webinar. You're going to get inundated with emails.
I would say, yeah, it's going to sound obvious, but just tell me why something's interesting. If you can make it, if it's maybe you don't have A-list talent, you can tell me why something's interesting or why it's going to be a new trend. We're not chasing old news either. We're trying to find the next big thing. So yeah, The more information
Okay.
and you can give us, the better.
Yeah, and then I think someone had a really great idea. Sally said, like, what are the top do's and don'ts? So I'll go over to Pamela, like the two do's and two don'ts.
I mean, reiterating what Paula said and also adding in like, you know, again, this is kind of obvious, but just checking, you know, my kind of author page, for example, and just seeing the types of stories that I've covered in the past. And if it's something new, then again, telling me why it's interesting and why it should be something that we should be chasing. And then some don'ts would be, I mean, I don't want to say it's a don't, but don't pitch me like food related things because we don't have, for example, like on the site, we just don't have a food dedicated section anymore. It's not to say like we just completely have, you know, shut that out, but just historically, recently we like tried putting that back up and it just didn't resonate the way that we thought it would. So I think, yeah, a don't would just be like, don't be pitching things that just completely do not intersect with anything that we're covering entertainment. I know a lot of things intersect when it comes to like tech and entertainment, sports and entertainment, but just before sending that pitch, really kind of double checking to see whether this fits more on my end or on the other spectrum. So that would be a don't. And I think that's it for the don't. And also
Okay.
just being patient. So don't be impatient. I will respond at some point.
Okay, great. All right, and Tricia, do you have any?
Yeah, I think, I don't know about my fellow panelists, but I get about 600 emails a day. That might be an exaggeration, but I believe I do. And so just, I don't need your 2-paragraph pitch on a TikToker that nobody's ever heard of. But what is helpful is just bolding straight facts. You know, this is the person's name. They won an Oscar. This is just an example. What am I going to pitch to my team? Like, what I'm forwarding your pitch, but like I would say 90% of the time, I'm rewriting the pitch to tell my bosses, this is why you should care. And these are the most recent headlines out of them. And this is what we can ask them. Why am I like, I am doing all the work,
Your work.
which is
You're doing our
fine.
work. Yeah.
But like, it just feels like nobody knows how to pitch. And it's like, that's fine. They're sending it to hundreds of journalists as well. But yeah, just the quick facts, bolded, highlighted. We're getting a lot of emails.
Right. Okay. And then finally, Craig, you could.
Yeah, I would just say 2 things. One is to pitch early. That is supremely helpful. It's just because we are so reliant on email. I do get about 600 emails a day. When I was the arts editor, I got on average about 800 emails a day. It just is staggering. And if you're in meeting, like there will be some days where I'm in meetings straight from 9 until 4 or 5 or 6. And I'm not looking at email till like after dinner. So you just have to pitch. The earlier you can pitch, the better. And the other thing I just wanted to make my pitch for is to think about some of the small stuff. Like I think there was a question about how do you get more coverage than just the listing. And I just wanted to emphasize, like for us, we have like a lot of different platforms. We have like the website, we have the newspaper, we have a bunch of newsletters, which are all free. A lot of them are very popular and growing, big growth area for us. That a lot of times a 1-paragraph blurb, like we have a new LA Goes Out newsletter about the best things to do in LA. You can get 1 paragraph in there, and I'm guessing you'll get a better response from that 1 paragraph in our free newsletter than you might from a 30-inch feature in our print edition. I just think I think sometimes we get hung up on the size of the coverage, but if you have a really smartly placed, readers are super busy, and it's frustrating for our reporters. They will write some like 2-page feature and and it looks great in print, but they might get less response from it than they did from a little 1-paragraph recommendation. I think sometimes the short stuff has really big impact. So I would just make a plea to not underestimate the power of a listing or a blurb.
Great, thank you. So I want to be mindful, we're already a little over and everyone is really busy, but I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for all this insight. It was great. Just also want to remind everyone that we will be emailing you their contact information as well. And if you're not a member of PRSA-LA, I do encourage you to become a member. We are going to be planning another at breakfast with later in June. We're considering that may be an in-person one as well. So please follow us on social media to get the latest updates. And again, thank you so much and have a great day. And thank you so much to our panelists. Hope everyone learned a lot. Bye.